Okay, guys, let's get started. We're talking today about a very interesting topic, which is the art of turning mistakes or failures into stepping stones for success. This is the first lesson in the context of the lessons that we will be having every Monday on the subject of psychology of success, entrepreneurship, and wealth creation. Again, every Monday we will be dealing with the psychology of success, entrepreneurship, and wealth creation. We are specifically dealing with this subject, the art of turning mistakes into stepping stones for success, based on the book by John C. Maxwell called Failing Forward. This is in the context of our country. Today is, as we are having this lesson, is the 23rd of December. Possibly the most important day in the history of the nation. Our nation, the future of our nation is hanging in the balance today because the final results of the last election will be announced today, which will decide if the nation will go in a direction of success and prosperity, or if our nation will enter into a chaos. So we are dealing with this subject of failing forward, the art of turning failures into stepping stones for success, bearing in mind the fact that no doubt everybody agrees that our nation has failed so far. Our government has, our leadership has failed the people, and we need to find a way of failing forward. We need to find a way of turning these mistakes, turning those failures into success. And this is possible, and that's why we are today starting with this subject of turning mistakes or turning failure into success. So let's go straight into it. As we say, this book is by John C. Maxwell, and we'll be dealing today with two major points. The first one is we will be talking about the important difference between people who are achieve and people who are average in life. What distinguishes the successful people? What distinguishes the achievers? What makes them different from average people? There is an important difference. Again, this is the first point we want to bring here, is that there is an important difference between people who are achieve in life and people who are simply average. We will begin by quoting J.M. Barrie, who said, "We are all failures." It's a good point to begin here. We are all failures, at least all the best of us. What is he saying in this quote is that we are all failures in one way or another. Even the people we admire, people we look up to in life, they are successful today. They have achieved a lot today because they have failed a lot. You can't succeed a lot without failing a lot. So it's in that sense that he says that we are all failures. At least the best of us are failures, because you can't be successful unless you become a failure too. So we are going to look now at the root of our achievement. What's the root? What makes the difference? Why do some people achieve so much while others simply dwell simply in mediocrity? We are going to look first at what is not the secret. And then we're going to look at the main secret. Because there are a lot of misunderstandings also. Some people think, number one, that it's an issue of a family background. If you're born in a family of successful people, then most people are successful because they come from successful families, or a family of achievers. Well, this somehow gives you an advantage. If you come from a family of successful people, the environment has an influence. It doesn't determine if we're going to be successful or not, but it influences in that direction. So it helps, but that's not the main point. Number two, wealth. Is it wealth? Is it because people are rich? Is it because people have a lot of money? Is it because people have a lot of wealth? Well, wealth helps. If you have wealth to begin with, you have an advantage. But again, this is not the main point. Number three, is it opportunity? Isn't that some people have opportunity and others don't? Is that the main factor? Well, that also helps. Yes, some people have more opportunities than others. Of course, those who have more opportunities have a kind of advantage, of course, if we compare them to others. But again, this is not the differentiator. Number four, is it high morals? High morals? No, it's not again. Now, this also helps. If you're a person of integrity, this gives you some kind of advantage. If you understand leadership, you know that trust is the foundation of leadership. So if people can trust you, people can easily follow you. Companies that are trustworthy, they're more likely to stop than those that are not trustworthy. So high morals do help, but they are not the main reason why people achieve. And again, what about absence of hardship? Is it because successful people are successful because they simply have been lucky enough in life not to have a lot of hardship? Well, this one, I don't know if it even helps, because sometimes if you don't have any hardship in life, you kind of take it easy, and the day you have some hardship, they kill you totally. So the absence of hardship is also not the reason why some people succeed while others fail. So if it's not family background, it's not wealth, it's not opportunity, it's not high morale, and high morals, and it's not the absence of hardship, then what is it? What is the main differentiator between people who achieve and people who remain average? Here it is. The difference between average people and achieving people is their perception and their response to failure. Again, this is important because this is the meat of the lesson. The difference between average people and achieving people, here are the two main words, is the, number one, perception. It's the perception that people have. And their response to failure. So it's an issue of attitude. I have this book called, that I wrote, that is called The Principle of Elevation. In the principle of elevation, the thesis is that your attitude determines your altitude. And your attitude determines your success and your happiness. So it's an issue of attitude. Attitude is the point, is the mindset. It's not necessarily if you come from a good family background, if you have high morals, if you have wealth. The differentiator is the way people perceive and the way people respond to failure. I would say even to say the way people perceive and react to the events of life. The attitude that people have to the events of life. Okay, so I teach in the principle of elevation, like the eagle. We need to be like the eagle. Okay. The eagles, normally, when the winds and the storms come, they simply rejoice because they use the same wind and the same storm to go higher in life. So it's not the problems themselves that defeat us. It's not the failure per se that defeats us. It's the way we perceive and the way we react to those things, whether we will go up or down. It's the way we perceive failure. It's the way we react to failure. It's a question of the right attitude. How people see failure and deal with it. Whether they possess the ability to look beyond. Here's another key word. Look beyond. If you're able to look beyond and keep achieving, this impacts us, more than anything in every aspect of our life. Our paradigm, the way we think, is the differentiator. There's no doubt in my mind, said a man called Kyle Roth Jr. He says, there is no doubt in my mind that there are many ways to be a winner. But there is only one way to be a loser, and that is to fail and not to look beyond the failure. So successful people are able to look, they fail, we all fail in life. But the differentiator is successful people are able to look beyond failure and move on in life. Isn't it interesting? Our ability to fail forward. And this is what we're talking about in this lesson. We're talking about the ability to fail forward. And this is a subject you'll never learn in school. Last week we had a lesson on leadership. And we're talking about the fact that the most important things in life normally are not taught in school. I don't know if this is done on purpose. But one of them is leadership. You don't have that in the education system. You rarely find a school or university that teaches leadership. And the same can be said about this subject today, which is failing forward. Your ability to fail, but to stand up again and fail and stand up again until you succeed. It's something that is not taught in school. Most people seem to have no clue concerning how to deal with failure. And we will explain why this happens. Many people fear failure. Many people are afraid of failure. This is how our society is organized, in a way that we fear failure. For example, in school, when a teacher, for example, asks a question to the student, many students will have problems to raise up their hands to answer the question because they are afraid that the answer may be wrong, and if the answer is wrong, people may laugh at them. And so since school, we begin to fear standing out because we fear we may fail. So we would rather stay in the background. We would rather be quiet than take a step of faith. So we learn in society to fear failure. And number two, many people misunderstand failure. And because they misunderstand failure, they don't know how to deal with it. And the other problem is that people are unprepared for failure. As we were saying, there are no lessons about how to fail. Okay. And this is something we should be taught. At home, we should be taught in school. This should be taught everywhere. Why should we be having lessons on success, you would ask? It's interesting. This guy, J. Wallace Hamilton, answers it very well in his quote. He says, the increase, isn't it interesting? He says, the increase in suicides, alcoholics, and even some forms of nervous breakdowns is evidence, listen to this, is evidence that many people are training for success when they should be training for failure. So we're training people for success when we should be training people for failure. It looks foolish, doesn't it? Then he goes on, he says, failure, he explains, failure is far more common than success. Isn't it interesting? Poverty is more prevalent than wealth, and disappointment is more normal than arrival. Isn't that interesting? So if we're looking like what he's saying is, we should be training people for failure. You may say this is foolish. It's not, because failure is more common than success. There are more people that fail. We fail more times than we succeed in life. So why are we being taught about success and we're not being taught about failure? There is more poverty. Poverty is more prevalent in life than wealth. So how come we're not teaching people how to deal with poverty, how to be resilient in difficult circumstances? How come we're not teaching that? And disappointment is more common than arrival. Many of the goals we set in life and the dreams that we have, they don't happen. So we are not being prepared to deal with failure in life. We're being prepared to deal with the success. And that's why when we fail, we don't know how to deal with it. And automatically failure destroys us because we don't understand failure. If you don't understand failure, failure will destroy you. When it should be teaching you, as we'll be looking in the coming minutes. You'll be asking by training for failure. Come on, you're thinking now. Training people for failure? Why should we train people for failure? Yeah, right now you are getting this chance. You're getting this opportunity now to sign up for a class you were never offered in school. As we were saying, they don't teach us about failure in school. You will learn how to confidently look. You will learn how to confidently look the prospect of failure in the eye and move forward anyway. So instead of fearing failure, like when you're in school, when it's time, when the teacher asks a question, you will never think twice again. You will automatically raise your hand and answer. Even if you're wrong, you will continue to participate in class. You will continue to ask questions. You will go out and start a business. Even if you fail, you will fail forward. In other words, you will look failure in the eye and move forward instead of fearing it. Because we've been taught to fear failure. Because in life, the question is not, why should you be trained for failure? The question is not if you will have problems. The question is not if you will have failure. No. It's sure, you will have. The question is how you are going to deal with those problems. Is how you are going to deal with failure. Are you going to fail forward or are you going to fall backward? I love Les Brown, one of the greatest motivation speakers in the world. He says, if you fall down, fall on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. In other words, we have choices in life. We will all fall. At one time or another, we will all fail. The question is, will we fail backwards or we will fail forward? In other words, shall we fail, learn some lessons, clean ourselves, and move on with life? If your perception of and response to failure were changed, what would you attempt to achieve? It's an interesting point, huh? Because the purpose of this lesson is to give you a new perspective on failure. Now, if your perception of failure changes, if you can learn to look at failure in a different way, if you can learn to respond to failure in a different way, what would you attempt to achieve? If you are like a little child that falls down and you raise up again, you fall again and you raise. A child never gives up, okay? And the child is never afraid or embarrassed when he falls down, he or she falls down. The child will raise up again and again. And would you be like a child? Wouldn't you be like a child? If you had a different perception, which is the perception we're going to give you today, wouldn't you be like that child who falls down and rises up again, falls down and rises up again, and move on with life? Wouldn't you do that? Well, I don't know what obstacles you're facing in your life right now. We all have different troubles, difficulties, challenges, but whatever they are, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that your life can change if you are willing to look at failure differently. That's the main point. It's not if you're going to have trouble or not, if you're going to have failure, you're going to fail or not. If you can look at failure differently, you have the potential to overcome any problem, any mistake, any misfortune, in fact. I teach that again. In my book, The Principle of Elevation. Okay, it's not your problem. Every problem has a solution. Okay, the subtitle of that book is The Key for Every Situation and the Solution to Every Problem. I teach that every problem has a solution. It doesn't matter how difficult it is. Every problem has a solution. If a problem doesn't have a solution, it's not a problem. It's just a fact of life, and you have to accept it. But all problems have solutions. So it's not the size of the problem that defeats us. It doesn't matter how big the problem is. It's the size of us. It's how big we are on the inside. Are we chickens or are like eagles that in spite of the storm, and not only in spite, also because they continue to rise up, not in spite of the storm, but also because of the storm. In other words, the bigger the storm, the higher they rise. So the problem is not the problem. The problem is how you look at the problem. The problem is not the failure. The problem is the way you look at failure. We all fail in life. Okay, but if you can, the key here is if you learn how to have a different perspective and a different reaction to the problems or to the difficulties. If you can learn to fail forward, and this is what this course here is about. Is to teach you to fail forward. Isn't it interesting? Mm-hmm. Again, the difference between average people and achievers is here. Average people, they fell backward. Troubles destroy them. If they go through a difficult time and they fail, they just get destroyed by failure. But achievers fail forward. They fail and they rise again. They fail and rise again until they succeed. Average people blame others. They like the blame game. Okay, they are victims. Okay, but what do achievers do? The achievers learn from each mistake and take responsibility for that failure, and they look for success. So they take responsibility. Average people or failures, they repeat the same mistake. As I said before, achievers learn from mistakes. Average people expect never to fail again, so they do everything to run away from failure. But successful people, achievers, they know failure is part of the progress. So they don't fear failure. They know they're going to fail, but they keep on moving in spite of the failure. Average people accept tradition blindly. They like the status quo, the way things are. They don't question anything. But how do achievers react? They challenge outdated assumptions. In other words, they challenge tradition. They challenge the status quo. They're not in a box. They think outside the box. And not only they think outside the box, they also think without a box. They're creator. They're architects of the future. Average people are limited by past mistakes. So what they did in the past, if they fail, they don't try again because they're afraid they will fail again. But achievers, successful people, they just believe something didn't work. I'm sorry, they take new risks. That's what I want to say. They take new risks. Okay? They know they have failed, okay, but doesn't limit them from taking new risks. Average people think, I am a failure. In other words, they take failure personal. If they fail once, twice, they believe they are failures, and that's why they stop trying again, because they believe they are failures. It's their identity. Successful people, achievers are different. They just believe something didn't work. Okay, I failed because something didn't work. They never think I am a failure. They are able to isolate that event and say, okay, I did something wrong here. Okay, I'm not the wrong person. I just did something wrong. And there is a big difference here. Average people simply quit when they fail. Achievers, they keep trying. In other words, they persevere. Isn't that interesting? Now, the conclusion, therefore, of this first lesson we want to teach today is this. Your first step towards failing forward. Remember, we are trying to learn today how to fail forward. So the first step, what is the first step you need to learn? You need to realize, here it is, that there is one major difference between average people and achieving people. And what is this major difference, which is the heart of the lesson today, is that the difference between average people and achieving people is their perception and their response to failure. Again, the difference between people who achieve much, okay, and people who are average is their perception and their response to failure. In other words, it has to do with attitude. Okay, failure, understand this, failure is not the opposite of success. Again, this is very important as we conclude. Failure is not the opposite of success, but the way to success. So you don't fear success. You move on in spite of success and in spite of failure, because you understand you need failure in order to succeed. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the way to success. So if you don't fail, you don't succeed. It's just as simple as that. So that's the first lesson. As I said, we're going to teach 2 lessons today. Now, let's go to the second lesson for today. The second lesson is that you need to get a new definition of failure and success. Yes. The first lesson is that you need to understand that there is a major difference between people who succeed and people who fail. And this major difference is the perception and the reaction you have to see. In other words, the way you define success. The way you define failure. That's why now we're going to learn. The second lesson, therefore, is to learn a new definition of failure and success. We need to look at failure in a different way. And this is the second lesson we will learn today. We will begin again with a quote by Nelson Boswell, who said, "The difference between greatness and mediocrity is often how an individual views a mistake." Again, the difference between greatness and mediocrity is often how an individual views a mistake. You see again here, perspective, okay, the way you perceive things, your paradigm, the way you think, the way you interpret things, the way you interpret failure. So the question here is, how do you define failure? How do you look at failure? Okay. One of the greatest problems people have is a quote by a man called Tony Gwynn, who is a baseball player. He's become the greatest hitter of his generation. We will tell his story now. But let's read his quote. He says, one of the greatest problems people have with failure is that they are too quick to judge isolated situations in their life and label them as failure. In other words, they look at one event, because they failed, they consider themselves failure. So he says, instead, they need to keep the big picture in mind. It's not because you failed at one event that you consider yourself a failure. No. You need to look at the bigger picture. What is the big goal? What is the end in mind? So that in the process, you may fail many times. But the question is, did you achieve the big picture? Did you achieve the main goal? This is what we need to look at. This guy, Tony Gwynn, is an interesting story. He has an interesting story. In fact, he is in the Hall of Fame, okay, in baseball. He's an American. His story is interesting. I don't remember the year, but it must be around 1999, something like that. Okay. In that year, he went into the stage, okay, into the field to play, and he missed, if you understand baseball, okay, his number 500-113 out. Okay. I think it's interesting. 5,113 out is when you fail at hitting the ball, and then you're really out, okay, of the game, okay. So he had 5,115 out. A great record, okay. But it is interesting that this same guy who had this number, a calculation was made that if we're going to count the numbers of seasons or years, okay, of baseball, by that number of outs, it would be equivalent to playing 8 seasons. For 8 years without reaching the first base. In baseball, you have the first, the second, the third, and the fourth base. When you count, it's the way they count. So, 8 years, imagine, without reaching the first base. That will be equivalent to that. It's equivalent. The number of misses or outs and hits he had is an average of 1 out of 3. So in every 3 attempts, he failed twice, which means he only got it right once. In every 3 attempts. So in every 3 times he attempted, 2 times he failed, and once only he succeeded. But my question is, did he consider himself a failure? No way. In fact, he was considered, and he still considered the greatest hitter of his generation. Why? His mindset. He didn't look at one event. Okay. It's like someone was saying, if you take 2 steps forward and 1 backward, 2 steps forward and 1 backward, you're still moving forward. Okay. So we will fail in life, and we will fail many times. But the important thing is that we keep on moving. Okay. So we need a new definition of failure. A failure is not the event that took place. It is a process, as we're going to look at. We need to look at the big picture. Okay. We can only consider, only you can call yourself a failure. But failing can be determined only at the end of your life. Only at the end of the project that you have, you can say that you have failed or not. But it's not the small mistakes that you made in life that determine whether you are a failure or not. Someone like this guy, Tony Gwynn, doesn't look at an out or a missing, for example, if you don't understand baseball. If he doesn't look at an out that he makes and think of failure. No. He sees it within the context of the big picture. His perspective leads to perseverance. His perseverance brings longevity, and his longevity gives him opportunities for success, because he understands the process. He understands that for every 3 attempts, he has to fail twice, and that's okay. Okay. So failure normally is more prevalent than success. Can you see that? He fails twice, and he only gets it right once. But this is enough to make him the best hitter of his generation. Isn't it interesting? So we need to correct some misunderstandings about failures. We need to have a new definition of what failure is. But for us to have a good definition of what failure is, we need to look at what failure is not. Okay. Number one, people think failure is avoidable. It's not. Okay? It's not. You can't avoid failure. That's why many people are afraid to fail, and the only way to avoid failure is just to sit at home and do nothing. It's impossible. Okay? So you will fail. Failure is simply not avoidable. You can't avoid it. Everybody fails. Okay? Everybody errs. Everybody makes mistakes. There's a saying that goes like this: to err is human, to forgive is divine. This was Alexander Pope who wrote that more than 25 years ago. If you're a human being, you are going to make mistakes, for sure. So here are some rules for being human. I believe they will help you. Number one, you will learn lessons. Mistakes are just lessons. So you will learn lessons. Number two, there are no mistakes, only lessons. So when you fail, don't call yourself a failure. Just take the lessons. Okay? Learn the lesson. Don't focus on the failure. Focus on the lesson you can learn in that mistake you made. Number three, a lesson is repeated until it's learned. So the fact that you fail again and again is because you haven't learned the lesson yet. Once you learn the lesson, you will move to the next stage. Number four, if you don't learn the easy lessons, they get hard. And we all know that. Pain is one of the ways the universe gets your attention. Okay, so sometimes we feel that pain is because we haven't learned the lesson. Rule number 5, you will know you have learned the lesson when your actions change. Isn't it interesting? So the essence of man is imperfection, says Norman Cousins. Okay, so don't try to be perfect. No one is perfect, and no one will ever be perfect. We need to understand that we need just to move forward, to keep trying, to continually become better, to better your best. Okay, like someone say, I like the idea of continuous becoming with a goal in front. Again, I like the idea of continuous becoming, not of perfection, but of continuous becoming with a goal in front. So we continue to learn in life. Okay. So failure is not avoidable, number one. Number two, about failure. People think failure is an event. It's not. Okay. John Maxwell wrote a book many years ago. I've read that book. In fact, it's called The Success Journey. Okay. In that book, he defines success as a journey. Okay, not as a destiny. And he says success is 3 things. Number 1, knowing your purpose in life. Number 2, growing to reach your maximum potential. Number 3, to sow seeds that benefit others. These 3 things are what success is all about. Knowing your purpose in life, growing to maximize your potential, and then sowing seeds for others, helping other people. So in that book, he explains success is not a destination. It's not a place where you arrive at one day. Okay? Instead, it is the journey you take. And whether you succeed comes from what you do day to day. It's what you do every day that determines if you are successful or if you are a failure. In other words, success is a process. Okay. So it's not an event, it's a process. It's not a destination, it's a process. Failure works the same way. It's not a place. It's not some place you arrive. Just as success is not an event, neither is a failure. Okay. So success is not an event, failure is not an event. It's how you deal with life along the way. It's the process. It's the day in and the day out. No one can conclude that he has failed until he breathes his last breath. Okay. So it's a choice. The definition you give of failure is a choice. You can call yourself a failure now, but you can choose. Okay. You haven't failed until the day you die. Okay. Until then, you're still in the process. The jury is still out. It hasn't been decided yet. Okay. So no one of us can define himself or herself as a failure. No. We are in the process of learning. Okay. Success is a process, failure is a process. We can decide today to begin a new page in life. Okay. You know the Chinese quote that goes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. Okay, so we may have failed yesterday. We may even have failed today, but today we have an opportunity to start again. In the same way we're talking about our country, Mozambique, today. It's a very important day. We can decide to begin a new nation today as they announce the results of the election. So it's a new beginning. So failure. We have failed for 50 years. Yes, but we can decide to open a new page. Failure is not an event. It is a process of sowing and reaping every day of our lives. And failure, success and failure are the same. Number 3, some people think failure is objective. It's not. Of course, then it's subjective. If it's not objective. What do we mean by that? When you err, when you make mistake, whether you calculate crucial figures, miss a deadline, blow a deal, make a poor choice concerning your children, or otherwise fumble a ball, what determines whether that action was a failure? So how do you define if something you did was a failure? Do you look at the size of the problem it causes, or the amount of money it costs you or your organization, or do you define failure by the amount of money that you lost, or how big the loss was? Is it determined by how much hit you have to take from your boss, or by the criticism of your peers, or do you determine failure by how much people criticize you? Is it how you define failure? No, it shouldn't be. Failure isn't determined that way. The answer is that you are the only person in the world who can really label what you do as a failure. Only you can decide if you fail or not. It's subjective. You can define it as a failure or a lesson you have learned. Your perception of and response to your mistakes, again, determine whether your actions are failures or simply lessons in life. According to Tulane University business professor Lisa Amos, the average of the entrepreneurs is 3.8 failures before they finally make it in business. They are not deterred by problems, mistakes, or errors. Why they are not stopped by that? So the average entrepreneur fails about 4 times before they succeed in business. But they are not stopped. The fact that they failed once, and they failed twice, they failed 3 times, they failed 4 times, it doesn't make them stop. They continue trying, and the average is on their 5th trial that they succeed. Why is it? Because they don't see setbacks as failures. No. They recognize that 3 steps forward and 2 steps I was saying before, still equals one step forward. You're still moving forward. And as a result, they overcome the average and become achievers. Isn't it interesting? So failure is not objective, it's subjective. Only you can define yourself as a failure. Isn't this interesting? Number 4, people think failure is the enemy. It's not. That's why we see us fail. That's why we avoid failure like the plague. Okay, most people try to avoid failure like the plague. They are afraid of it. But it takes adversity to create success. NBA coach Rick Pitino states it even more strongly. He says, failure is good. Isn't it interesting? Failure is good, he says. It's a fertilizer. Everything I've learned about coaching, I've learned through making mistakes. Isn't it interesting? Failure is good. It's a fertilizer. So you learn from failing. Okay, is failing painful? Yes, but you learn from it. It's what you do. It's how you perceive it, and it's what you learn, the way you react to it. People who see failure as the enemy are captive to those who conquer it. Herbert Brocknell believes, let's quote him, he says that the fellow who never fails, the fellow who never makes a mistake takes his orders from one who does. In other words, the people who avoid failure, the people who avoid making mistakes, they will work for those who do make mistakes. The people who are not afraid to make mistakes and keep on moving. Isn't it interesting? Observe any high achievers, and you will discover a person who doesn't see a mistake as the enemy. You remember Tony Gwynn? For him to get one hit, he has to get 2 outs. Okay, 5,113 outs just to get 278 hits. Isn't that interesting? But he doesn't consider himself a failure because of the perspective. So he doesn't see a mistake as an enemy. That's true in any endeavor. Musicologist Eloise Ristad emphasized that when we give ourselves, listen to this, when we give ourselves permission to fail, we at the same time give ourselves permission to excel. Okay? So we need to give ourselves permission to fail, permission to make mistakes, and not be afraid of making mistakes. And when we do that, we're giving ourselves permission to excel. In other words, you can't excel without making mistakes. So the more we try, the more we can make mistakes, and the more mistakes we make, the more we learn. Isn't it beautiful? Number 5, people think failure is irreversible. It's not irreversible. It's not. In other words, what we're saying here is that there's always a way out of failure. It's not that you fail once and then you're done. No. There is always a way out. Failure is not the end. We must never see failure as final. There's an old saying in Texas. It doesn't matter how much milk you spill as long as you don't lose your cow. Isn't it interesting? Doesn't matter how much milk you lose. The issue is the cow. Okay, so the cow represents the big picture, the big goal that you have in life. Okay, that's the focus. Okay, the milk, you may lose milk. That's okay. It's making mistakes here, falling there. The issue is, are you moving forward? I like the definition of success by Erling Nightingale when he says success is the progressive realization of a worthy idea. Again, success is the progressive realization of a worthy idea. The successful person is a person who has a goal, and he every day, even if it's a big or small step, but he's moving forward every day. This is success. Success is the progressive realization. So it's not about the milk itself, it's about the cow. You're keeping the cow. In other words, mistakes are not irreversible. Keep everything in perspective. The problems come when you see only the spilled milk and not the big picture. People who correctly see mistakes take it in stride. Mistakes don't make them want to give up, so they don't give up when they make a mistake. Success doesn't make them think that they are a step up. In other words, success doesn't make yourself doesn't make you arrogant or proud. But also, when you fail, you don't let failure hit you in the heart and to the point of giving up. No. You fail forward. In other words, you fail, you look up and you get up again. Okay. So every event, whether good or bad, is one stop, a small step in the process of living. As Tom Peter says, if silly things, listen to this, if silly things were not done, intelligent things would never happen. Again, if silly things were not done, intelligent things would never. So sometimes we'll do stupid things, we'll do silly things, but if these stupid things are not done, the intelligent ones will never be done. So we must be ready to do the stupid things if we want the intelligent ones to be done. Number 6. People think failure is a stigma. So when they fail, they label themselves as failure, and they believe they will never succeed, and they quit because they see themselves as failure. Mistakes, that's wrong. Mistakes are not permanent markers. As Sam Irvin Jr. said, defeat may serve as well as victory. Listen to this. Defeat may serve as well as victory. So we learn from victory, yes, but we should also learn with defeat. So defeat could serve us as well as victory. Why? Because the failure shakes the soul and lets the glory out of it. Have you ever gone through failure or being defeated? The pain it causes, then it shakes you. It makes you work harder. It makes you practice harder when you fail. So failure is good. Someone said that the enemy is the best teacher. Okay. So when we are defeated by the enemy, we feel motivated to rise and try harder again in order to succeed the next time. That's the way we need to look at faith. When you make mistakes, don't look at them. Don't let them get you down. And don't let yourself think of them as stigma. Make each failure a step to success. In other words, fail forward. Keep on moving. And number 7, the last misunderstanding that people have. People think failure is final. Oh my God. It's not final. And even what may appear to be a huge failure doesn't need to keep you from achieving. We have here the example of Sergio Zima. He was the mastermind behind the new Coke, something that marketing consultant Robert Musk sees as one of the greatest product failures of all time. So this guy, Sergio Zima, had the greatest failure in business when he invented new Coke. Zima, who successfully introduced Diet Coke, believed that Coca-Cola needed to act boldly to reverse its 20-year market decline against its rival, which was Pepsi at the time. His solution was to stop offering the drink that had been popular for nearly 100 years, changing the formula, and offer it as new Coke. So he invented new Coke. The move was an abysmal failure that lasted 79 days in 1985 and cost the company about $1 million. In other words, Coca-Cola company lost about $100 million because of the mistake that Z-Man made when he introduced the new Coke. That's interesting. People hated the new Coke, and it caused Zima to leave the company because of that. Okay. But Zim's problem with New Coke didn't keep him down, so he failed forward. Years later, when he asked When asked if the venture was a mistake, listen to what he answered, what he said. He said, no, categorically, it was not a failure. He said, no. He said it was a blunder, a misstep, a bust. In other words, between bust and something else, he replied. Now, if you say to me that strategy that you guys embarked on didn't work, I'll say, yeah, absolutely, it didn't work. So you see, he separates himself from the failure. He says the strategy didn't work. It doesn't mean that it was a failure. We just made a mistake, and it's normal. Okay, so that strategy didn't work, absolutely. But the totality of the action ended up being positive. So in the bigger picture of things, in the big scheme of things, that mistake became a success later. When? Ultimately, the return of Coca-Cola Classic made the company stronger. So they made a mistake with the new Coke, but they continued improving to the point of inventing Coca-Cola Classic, which made the company strong. Zim's assessment was confirmed by Robert Goldwater, the late chairman and chief executive of the Coca-Cola Company. He hired again this man called Zim at the Coca-Cola in 1993. What did Goldwater say? He said, judge the results. We get paid to produce results. We don't get paid to be right. You see, failure is not final. That was a big failure. $100 million lost in about 2 months. It is a lot. But he failed forward when he produced a new version of Coke. Okay. So it's never final. The fact that you have made a big mistake, and even if the failure was so big, it's not final. You can still have an opportunity to begin again and again and again until you succeed. Until your last breath, you're not a failure. It's all in the way you look at it. It's all an issue of perspective, as we're saying. If you tend to focus on the particular events in your life, you need to do something here. Put things into perspective. When you do that, you will be able to share the philosophy of some mindset of the Apostle Paul. Learn to be like Paul in the Bible, who was able to say, I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. So you see the guy, okay, a guy who went through a lot. Okay. Paul, consider him, okay, it says a guy who was shipwrecked, he was whipped, he was beaten, he was stoned, and he was imprisoned. He went through a lot of stuff. And through everything, his faith enabled him to maintain perspective. He realized that as long as he was doing what he was supposed to do, his being labeled success or failure by others really didn't matter. So it's not what people say, it's not what people think. You must look at the bigger picture. It's the end result that counts. Okay, as we say, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Look at the bigger picture. Okay, so Paul had this big picture. He could go through difficult times. He was going through difficult times. But he says, I've learned in whatever state I am to be content. So this is what we need to learn to get the right perspective. Every person's life is filled with errors and negative experience. But know this. Errors become mistakes when we perceive them and respond to them incorrectly. Mistakes become failures when we continue to respond to them incorrectly. So it's the way we perceive and respond to them. Each of us has to make a choice. Are we going to slip life away, avoiding failure at all costs, or in other words, we'll just stop moving and do nothing in order to avoid failure? Or are we going to wake up and realize that failure, listen to this is key, that's why I underlined it. Failure is simply, what is failure? Failure is simply a price. It's simply a price we pay to achieve success. Again, failure is simply a price we pay to achieve success. So if you want success, if you want to buy success, you have to go with the currency, and the currency is failure. The money to buy success is failure. You can't succeed without failure. If we learn to embrace that new definition of failure, then we are free to start moving ahead. Come on, and failing forward. So we are like that little child that learns to walk. We fall and raise up again. We fall and raise up again. And we never give up, and we're never shamed, we're never embarrassed because we fell down. No. We rise up again. Okay. Even tragedy. Many of us, that's the problem. Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. This is Thomas Edison quote. It's interesting. You know, Thomas Edison invented the greatest inventor of all times. When he invented the light, the lamp, people say, you failed 1,000 times. He tried 1,000 times. They say, 1,000 times, give up. He said, no, I haven't failed 1,000 times. I have discovered 1,000 times how not to make a lamp or light. He ended up discovering it, you see. So if you can change the way you see failure, you gain the strength to keep running the race. What you need to do, get a new definition of failure. Regard it as the price you pay for progress. If you can do that, you'll put yourself in much better position to fail forward, make mistakes, and keep moving. So in conclusion, what's your second step? We have had the first step. You remember the second step toward failing forward is this: learn a new definition of failure. How can you help yourself learn a new definition of failure and develop a different perspective concerning failure and success? By making mistakes, my brother. Chuck Browner of Idea Connection System encourages trainees to think differently through the use of mistake quarters. Listen to this idea. It's interesting. He gives each student a quarter of 30 mistakes to make for each training session. So he gives you can make 30 mistakes. And if a student uses up all 30, he receives another 30. As a result, the students relax. They are not afraid of making mistakes because he gives them a quarter of making mistakes. So they are free to making mistakes, but while they are trying to better their best. Okay. As a result, the students relax, think of mistakes in a whole new light, and begin learning. As you approach your next big project or assignment, give yourself a reasonable mistake quotient. How many mistakes should you expect to make? 20, 50, 90 mistakes? Give yourself a quarter and try to hit it before bringing the task to completion. Interesting. Remember, mistakes don't define failure. No. They are merely the price of our achievement on the success journey. Let me read that. Mistakes don't define failure. They are merely the price of achievement on the success journey. So if you want to have success, you must make mistakes. Summary of the two steps we look at today. The first lesson today is you need to understand there is an important difference between average people and achievers. What that difference is their perspective and their reaction to failure. And number two, you need to use a new definition of failure. And what is the new definition of failure? Is that failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the way to success. Failure is the price you pay in the direction of success. So this is the conclusion of our lesson today on failing forward, the art of turning mistakes into stepping stones for failure. We will meet again next week, Monday, at the same time. What a great pleasure. This was Mark Symbol this time. Thank you very much.